Ooh, your event is starting. We're live! Hello, Annelie.
Hello, Rob.
Hang on.
We're not.
There we go. We should be live by now. So, what are you drinking, Annelie?
I have a lovely cup of Earl Grey tea
Earl Grey tea?
in a very nice Whithard mug.
Lovely. I have today gone for the Hobgoblin, which you very kindly got from
Hobgoblin.
Iceland for me.
I did.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Start Your Creative Business AMA. We've got a few people have sent us in some questions in advance, which is very good. And hope somebody is able to catch this live. And if not, you'll be able to catch it after the fact anyway. So to begin with, I thought it'd be a really good thing to start with to explain what the course is, what the purpose of the AMA is. So I'll just pull up the flyer, so I've got it in front of me. So on the 10th of March, we're running a full-day course, Start Your Creative Business, and the whole reason for us doing the course is, well, partly because we're involved in the Chamber of Commerce. Annelie's the Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm the Vice President, and last year we did a really interesting workshop on the... probably won't close that window, yeah. Sorry, the joys of streaming. Last year we did a really good workshop on social media marketing, and that went down really well. We had a lot of people turn up, even though we didn't market it that hard, did we?
No.
Until about a few days before the event, and then we finally went, we're going to have to tell people this is happening. So this year, we really did want to do more workshops like that. We're very busy because you know, Annie runs the Craft Collective. I run businesses as well, developing software. But we're a year on, and we thought, well, let's take this a step further. Let's try and get more people to the event. So this year we're going for a much broader reach. Basically, anyone who's either starting a creative business or kind of have started, but you know, still struggling to get to grips. Part of the reason we're running the course is I remember what it was like starting my first business and just not even knowing what questions to ask. You know, what it's not even knowing the answers to the questions, but it's just not knowing where to start at all. There's a lot of kind of conflicting information online about what to do.
Very confusing.
It's very confusing.
Very confusing.
There's a lot of new terms that apparently you're either supposed to already know or that you have to learn.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Lots of legal jargon.
Legal jargon.
HMRC don't make it easy either.
Which is the tax office. You might not even know. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's a big jumble of new information that you'll have never heard of in your life, because these things, and you know, even if you take business studies, most of this stuff is not taught in school. You might come out of school with a basic knowledge of it, but when you actually get down to grips and you start doing it, it's you know, there's a lot to take on board. So what we're going to, I'll just quickly run through what we're going to be doing in the workshop. We've got some bullet points here of things that we're going to cover, which is things like products versus services, cash flow, smart marketing, knowing your customer, incorporation and business structure, intro to business planning and financial modelling, basic bookkeeping and tax, building your team, and legal and patents. But the overarching theme of the whole workshop is I don't come from I guess I come from an arts background, but I don't come from a craft background like most of the people that are going to be coming to this course, because they'll have heard about this through the Craft Collective. But I come from a music background, music industry, and then going into writing computer software. So I'm really interested in how the kind of entrepreneurial thinking, like the latest thinking in startup businesses, can be applied to your small creative startup businesses like the Craft Collective, and we've tried to do that kind of when we've started this business. So yeah, that's what we're working on.
Emails.
we're getting pings, hopefully questions coming in.
Yeah.
So I'm Rob Harrison.
And I am Annelie Wood.
So I'm going to be running the course. This is really my course, but from Annelie at the Craft Collective, my business partner at the Craft Collective, you're kind of also going to kind of translate some of my things into kind of crafty creator speak rather than kind of technical stuff. So
dial it down from the techie terminology and make it just a bit more understandable for those that don't have a clue about software development or things like that.
So anyway, I'll close that poster and we'll go on to our first question. This is an AMA Reddit style Ask Me Anything. So if you've any questions, whatever they're to do with, you don't really care if they're anything to do with the workshop, but particularly if they're things that are business related, that would be good. But really anything you fancy. So what is our first question?
So we've got a question from Rosie, and she is asking, what can you do to ease any fears people might have about going self-employed, especially if they don't know if their business will be a success or not?
Okay, yeah. This is a really interesting one. So a lot of people think that you have to switch and go self-employed all in one go, or at a particular point in time you will quit your job and suddenly start a business. I think most people would say that's probably a bad idea unless you've got your market research, your business plan, and everything together, by which I mean unless you can prove, not just to yourself but to other people, other investors, that you have a going concern, that when your business starts out, you'll be able to take it to the next level. It's having that little bit of cash from a job can be really, really useful in the early days of starting a business. The startup phase is one of those where everything is new and you don't know what the business is going to be. And so being able to either work full time and do something in your weekends or evenings, or even reduce your hours to maybe like 4 days a week, or going down to 3 days a week, and just spending the time on the business. It's definitely something that grows. There's far too many businesses that I've seen that have started and that have thought that what they will do is they'll suddenly launch and then they'll have this huge surge of people that will be like, oh, amazing, we all want to buy your product, and everything will be okay. They call it like the we'll build it and they will come methodology. And that's really dangerous because if you're going to do that, and it can be done, but normally it requires lots and lots of money. It helps if you're already like a company and have a lot of money to play with, so that you can have a big budget for advertising, and then have a product plan where you build up to a launch day, and then it all goes live, and everyone hears about your product, goes crazy and buys it. But what you don't hear about is perhaps the 3 years in product development where big companies like that, have spent their time with focus groups, honing their product, deciding what they're going to deliver. They're probably already in business, and they probably have already sold a bunch of products, so they have a clear idea about what their customer wants. So in general, if you're at home and you've got a normal 9-to-5 job, and you're thinking, well, hang on a second, I've got this great business idea, I'd like to earn a little extra money in my spare time, I would say, well, business doesn't have to take all of your time. There are ways of doing things. There's this thing that I'll come on to later on called passive income, which is a really kind of new way of thinking about an old idea, but it doesn't have to take all of your time. What's really great about products is that you can make a product, and the time that you spend making your product, maybe that's like 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year or whatever. But if you're starting out, probably do something small. So say it takes like a month, maybe 3 months or something to build your product. That product can be sitting there earning you money for the rest of your life. If you do something like write a book, or you make a craft kit, or you do something creative where you're making a product which is easily duplicatable, which you can have sitting there in shops for years to come. So say you don't instantly make a profit, but actually after 3 years of selling that, you made a profit. Well, it was worth the time doing it. Because it'll just build and build and build. Particularly if you keep putting the work in, keep letting people know about it, and keep telling people about it. Sometimes you have these instant successes and then they drop off to nothing. And then sometimes you have these bubbling products where they kind of start, and you may have a bit of a bump to start with as people hear about it for the first time, and then it just bubbles away, quite nicely, earning you a little bit of extra cash, and either having more of those products or developing those products into better products that you can then sell for more money later down the line is a really good thing that you can do. And you don't have to quit your job. You don't have to, do all those things, particularly if you're worried about, if you've got dependents, you've got family or something, you're worried about quitting your job. There are things that you can do in like an evening or a weekend, even if it's just one night a week or something, that can, develop slowly into your new business.
Well, one thing from a craft kind of point of view, it's really important to test your market as well.
Yeah.
So, just to put it out in baby steps. Like Rob was saying, you don't need to straight away quit your job and throw everything you've got into it. There's loads of opportunities for you to test it out at craft markets. Yeah. Online sales like Etsy, there's loads of platforms, shops like the Craft Collective, there's loads of platforms in which you can test the market and see what reception is to your product before you even think about quitting your job.
Yeah.
And that will give you an idea of how popular is my product going to be. I think that works similar in a lot of industries as well.
Here's the interesting thing. You don't see this. Companies do this all the time, but you don't see it. They do, because either the point when you see it is when they have a successful product and they're going out there and they've gone to either an investor or a bank and they've gone, I want £100,000 to spend on advertising so that everyone in the country knows about my product. Yeah. They know that product's a success at that point. Yeah. What you don't see is all the years and years of work honing the product.
Marks and Spencer's is the perfect example of, starting on a little market store, growing into international empire. They tested the market. They discovered what was good, what worked, what didn't. They started off really small and they grew from that. That's probably quite an extreme example.
Well, the worst thing is when you you do flop. You think you've got a great thing going on and you put all of your money, your whole life savings into it, and then it flops, and that's so often that's people going for that big release and that big starting big, or what tends to be what I tend to do is go for the biggest building that I can afford rather than starting small in a small place, which is probably the more sensible thing to do. But so we've got some more questions. Have you got any more questions over there?
We've got a question from Denise Shaw.
Oh, just before we go into Denise's question, I will say we're on a bit of a time delay here, so apologies if we're not getting your comments like straight away. We're on a few minutes time lag. That's my fault, because when I pressed the button I didn't press the short latency thing, so so sorry about that. Next time I'll do it better.
Okay, yeah. So we've had a message from Denise Shaw. She says, "Hi, I'm booked on the course, but not sure which craft I'd like to do as a business. Does that matter?" No,
I don't think it does. I think that this is actually a really good question to talk about how the Craft Collective started, because you know, there are these things in business where they call them pivots, but they're points in time where you decide to take a different path as a business, and it does happen. You don't always end up with the same business that you thought you'd have when you started out. The Craft Collective was an interesting one because you started out creating craft kits.
Yeah, for children.
For children, and you went to craft stores and craft markets, didn't you?
I did.
And you had a brand called Make with Annie.
Yeah.
Which you still have.
I still
do.
Yeah.
And you made a range of products of craft kits, took them to lots of craft markets, and they sold.
They did.
But it wasn't.
It was hard work.
It was hard work, yeah.
It was. I mean, sometimes it's 12 hours a day, and that's just on the day of the market. So there's all the prep beforehand. There's making sure you've got all your stock and your flows and etc. And they're long. They're really long, quite hard days.
Yeah. Which
is what started to feed into the idea of changing things up a little.
And you made sales, but the sales you made were. The amounts you were taking home were small.
They were.
Because craft kits, you don't want to sell them for that much money, but you have to really pay for your own time stood on the stall.
Yeah.
And that was a problem, wasn't it?
I think that's the most expensive element, is the amount of time that you spend in one day. If you think 7-8 hours a day at a craft fair, it's a long day.
And then I think. You made your first pivot, I think, which was when you set up the website.
Yes,
You came up with the name Craft Collective.
Yeah.
You started the website and started it as a magazine for crafters, for creators, telling as a blog basically for people, and so that was a pivot in that direction.
Yeah, we had the idea was to get not just myself writing weekly blog articles, but to invite the local crafting community or the wider crafting community to all write something different about their experiences and what they did, but more the back of it. So not like this is my product and this is how I made it, but more like this is how I got to that product, this is how I developed that product range, this is how I approached craft fairs, this is how I approached markets. It was more to look at that side of
telling your the story of the person that's creating it.
Yeah.
And that was good. We had a lot of interesting people writing for that.
We did,
but one of the things that came out of doing the craft markets is that realisation that it doesn't make financial sense to have a dozen craft stalls with a dozen people trying to sell at those craft stalls, because that's a dozen members of staff where there only needs to be one member of staff, and it's 20 quid a day sometimes for a craft store, and you're only there for one day, so it's difficult. It can be cost effective if it's a successful craft fair. It can not be cost effective. That's all about how much the people advertise it, I think, and how many people come along. But then we made another pivot because we found the shop that we're in now. It was at a good rate rent wise. We were able to formalise this into a business plan. And that was also based around the idea of giving people the opportunity to try selling their products at a price that everyone could afford. So basically there was less risk. The risk was mitigated across all of the creators because everyone was chipping in a little bit, but it was just enough where if you sold a lot, you'd be happy with the margin that you were getting, and if you didn't sell, you didn't lose a huge amount of money.
It's fairly low risk.
Yeah.
That was the idea behind it. I think it doesn't really matter with the course. Looking at that, I don't think it really matters whether you have a business idea and you're ready to go and you just need to develop it and learn the things that Rob's going to be talking about on the day, or whether you've got no idea, you just know that you want to do something creative as a business. I don't think that it really matters whether you've got that nailed down or not. The course is going to cover a complete broad range of things.
I mean, I guess bringing it back to the question, it was the thing is that your business plan develops. You have these moments of complete U-turns that we call pivots. You have these moments of gradual, like constant learning, where you change your products and you improve things and you improve things and you improve things. But you also have these moments where it goes in a completely different direction to what you first expected. And I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping to teach in this workshop is in this course, is that really these things can be applied to any business. And it's not just creative businesses, but creative businesses in particular seem to be lagging behind the times a bit in terms of kind of the latest thinking on startups. And so the rules that we're going to be talking about can be applied to any business. And it just gives you the tools. We're not going to go in depth into absolutely everything. We're going to try and talk about as much as we can, cover as much as we can, and then we're going to have Q&A, and we're going to have time to mingle. So if there's anything that any questions that you've got that are specific, or that we've discussed something and you want to know more, we'll talk about that in the Q&A. And if you've got anything that's really specific to your business, that you've got an idea of what it is you want to do, or you want some ideas of how you could take it further, we've also got the mentoring scheme, haven't we, afterwards?
Yes, yeah.
So if you come out of the course and you're like, okay, I want to take this further, I do want to start my business, but I'd like some help, we're going to basically have regular meetings. Can't remember how frequent we said it was.
Me neither. That's a bit
one-on-one meetings, basically, where we can talk to you about your business specifically, and help develop it. Cool. I've got some more questions over here. Do you want to? The other thing is, I'm going to go back very quickly to Rosie's question, because I want to talk very briefly about something we call like the minimum viable product, and that's something that we're going to cover on the course. Minimum viable product is, once you get your head around it, it's really important. It's part of that phase where you're just starting out and you're developing your products, and you want to get some information about the customer. Am I the biggest question, I guess, is the customer going to be interested in this product that I'm building? And one of the ways that you can take some of the assumptions you're going to make in your business plan and get some actual data on it is by building a minimum viable product. Excuse me. And the minimum viable product is basically the smallest thing that you can make, or the kind of the least effort that you can put in order to produce a product that you can then sell to a customer and get some information back from that customer. So some of that information might be, did anyone buy it? So this is where you're thinking about, okay, where I want to be is I want to have a range of silver jewellery products, all boxed in their own, unique cases, and it's going to look amazing. We're going to have a website, we're going to do all this stuff. Right, but what's the minimum viable product? Well, you can start with just one piece of jewellery. You could start with it in a case that you bought. You don't necessarily need to have your own cases printed. You can start with it, and try and selling that to a customer. Don't make your most expensive product. Don't make make something that you can afford to do, that you can afford to put the time into making, and test it and see if people are actually interested in buying it. And that's called the build, measure, learn feedback loop. And the minimum viable product is something that you build, you then measure to see how well it sells, and then you learn from that, from what the customers tell you, what the customers like, what the customers don't like, and it starts all over again. So it's a big circle. I just wanted to touch on that because that's something we're going to be talking about.
So yeah, I was just thanking Denise for her question,
cool.
and hoping that she was happy and checking she didn't have any more questions for us. That's why I was tapping away.
Great stuff.
So
we've had Rosie's question.
We've had Rosie's and we've had Denise's.
Yeah.
And we've got one more here.
Yeah.
Do you want to go for that one?
Yes. So that's yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when's the right time to start a business. I think that the right time is always now. There's a step that almost there's always a step that almost everyone can take today to start their business. You don't need to start making product necessarily. You don't need to start, investing a lot of money or quit your job. But what you can do is take an action. So if you're thinking about this course, or you're in touch with us online, you've probably already got some ideas about what your business might be. You may already have a business that's already ongoing. It's already going, but this is specifically about when's the right time to start. So I would say you're going to have some ideas about what your business is. What's your first question? What's your first thing that you're like, maybe you're talking about, well, which craft should I choose? Should I make a business based around this craft, or should I make a business based around this craft? Well, this is a perfect example of testing, where you can make one of each and then try them in the marketplace and see how they sell. You don't even need to make one of each. You can make mock-ups, and we'll talk about this on the course, about where you can make you can like fake it till you make it, and make a mock-up and a pretend web page maybe, where there's a couple of products. See how many people are interested in the two of them. From that you can decide, well, more people are interested in my wood carving than they are in my metalwork. So I'm going to go for the wood carving one, and then you might have your next question, which is, well, should I do this or should I do that? So I would say there's always a step you can take today, even if that's sitting down and putting some of your thoughts on paper about what you're thinking of doing. There'll be big questions and small questions, and perhaps the thing to do would be to start with the biggest question, and then think about how can I test that. And we'll talk more about that in the course, but you don't need to even make a product to test some of these things. Like I mentioned, if you're thinking about starting a jewellery business, you might have to spend a lot of money getting all the silver to make all that jewellery, but you can actually do mock-ups. You can make digital images. You can look at, you can make decisions about whether something's going to sell or whether something else is going to sell before you've even made them. But I would say there'll be something that's putting you off, that's stopping you from doing it, and always the best thing to do is to take that small step today. Just tiny little thing, 20 minutes, do something.
Baby steps.
Good plan. Right, what's our next question?
Okay, next question. Sorry, my thing's just gone to sleep. Next question.
I'm going to check the chat, see if there's one on here.
Yep, next question. I run a small craft business from my home. Is this the right workshop for me?
Small craft business from your home.
Yeah.
I would say it's always best to start at home if you can, or to start somewhere where you're not having overheads, because the longer that you can keep it going without putting things like rent, or into the equation, the better. Sometimes it's not always possible. In those cases, I would say do all of your tests beforehand to make sure that what you're doing is what is you're happy that it's going to do well. And also, you don't have to do everything yourself. Can you share a workshop space with someone? If you're only going to be there on a Saturday, can someone else have it during the week?
Shared studio spaces are huge, especially down in Cornwall. You can find a lot of gallery studio spaces like Crowdy, for instance. There's one just up the road in Red Reef, literally 2 minutes away from us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's quite common now to share studio spaces.
And you know what? The other thing is, you don't have to start a business on your own. It's better, almost always better, if you have someone with complementary skills that is also interested in starting. You're going to run into that problem sometimes where people want to start a business with you and then they end up doing nothing and you end up doing all the work. That does happen. That's all about choosing the right people to work with. And also, you can bring people in and out of your business. So if you start a business with someone and they're not putting the money in or the time in, you can always there are things you can do in that situation, but it's always easier to divide and conquer in terms of jobs, and there are going to be some people that are artists and some people that are salespeople. And I can tell you for one, having worked in the music business, that people that musicians are not good at selling, and vice versa. If you're an artist or a creator, you're probably not as good at selling as you might think you are. And there are people that have complementary skills. So if you can work with someone who's a good marketer, or if you're the good marketer and you can work with someone that will do something else for you, that's a good way of sharing the risk and sharing the cost of shared studio space. Even if if you've got a group of craftspeople that and you're like, let's all come together and start a business together under one kind of brand.
Something you just hit on there sparks a little flame in my mind. When you run your own small business, you have to be everything. So you're the designer, the creator, the salesperson, the marketing, the PR, the accounts person, the admin person. So if you think of a bigger company, they're all individual roles, sometimes departments filled with 4 or 5 people, and you have to do all of these jobs. And it can be very overwhelming because that's a lot of information that you need to know about, when actually your main thing is you are an artist or a musician or a programmer like yourself, and that's what you're good at. That's your talent. That doesn't mean that your talent is marketing. My talent is not, as we both know, my talent is not finances. That's why we have an accountant. So, and what this course is going to cover is a little bit of all of those things. So it's just going to take the like pressure off, so you can go, okay, I do have to be all of these people, but here's how you be all these people. It's quite overwhelming to begin with, but when you break it down,
I mean, the other advantage
it's not so scary.
The other advantage of working with other people is and I've definitely made this mistake in the past with businesses I've run. Get out of your own way. Don't be the one that is stopping your business from working just because you're trying to do everything yourself. Particularly if if you're a perfectionist like me, you'll have an idea in your mind about how everything needs to work and how everything needs to be. But it's not worth it if you can bring other people in that can take ownership of that bit of work that needs to be done. You have to be optimistic and think, I'm building a successful business, and there will be enough of this business around to share with others. Because the other thing is, you're going to want to build these businesses to scale. you're not going to want to end up building a business that is too big for you to handle, or for example, you want to retire. We don't want to be, you don't. Nobody wants to work for a living. No, but you want to run your business for a period of time until you can put managers in place and they will run it for you. You don't want to necessarily be. I mean, with craft businesses, with creative business, sometimes you do want to be the one that does all the creating and stuff like that. But at some point, you're going to go, I can't be bothered with taking these parcels to the post office. I can't be bothered with websites. I don't want to run websites. I want to make my craft. So bringing other people on board to do part of the job is always cheaper to do if they come in as a shareholder in a business, or co-owner of a business. It's difficult to bring people in as employees. Early on, easier later on when you've got lots of money flowing, obviously. Have we got another question?
We do. We have a question from Amy, and the question is, where can I get capital or investment from if I have no capital to put in the first place?
Okay, so there are various different ways of getting money. If you don't have any in the first place, you can bring investors into your business. So that's taking money in exchange for shares in the business. You can take out a bank loan, and you can do things like crowdfunding, which we'll talk about a lot, I think, at the workshop. Crowdfunding is very fun, and it's also good PR. But one of the things that you're probably saying to yourself is, well, no banker is going to give me a loan for this, or no, investor is going to come in and put money in this. And this is where your business plan really comes into its own, because business plan is not something you write at the beginning of your business and then follow. It doesn't work like that, even though, back in the old days, that was the way that it was seen to work. It doesn't work like that. That's a load of rubbish. It might do if you're starting a mine or something like that, and you know exactly what needs to do, and you're going to need £1,000 in capital back then, and you go along and your investors would put in £1,000, and then you would do the business plan.
I think businesses the way we run businesses has had to change.
It's got a lot more complicated.
Yeah, it just.
If you're opening a butcher's, you can plan what a butcher, especially if you've been a butcher, you can plan how that works. But if you're opening a business that's never happened before, which most businesses, to be honest, you're trying something new or something that's not quite been done before, then there's no plan that can be definitely followed to the letter. What you do is it's something that evolves with your business. So you put something in writing at the beginning, if you can, put as much detail in there. You need to do things like your mission statement, because you need to know what your mission as a business is. But the rest of the business plan, and this is the figures and the information that you receive, changes. And if you've got, if you do the best financial model in the world and get everything right from the beginning, then you're definitely in the minority of businesses. Most businesses, they have an idea of what they're going to do, and then it evolves over time as they learn. And this is something that newer the older companies like banks and things like that are just starting to figure out this is how things work. And that's because this kind of thing is the terminology is changing. The stuff that they're doing in Silicon Valley with the big tech startups is changing. And investors have cottoned onto this a lot earlier. They can see the value in the learning. But in short, I'm going to draw it back to the question, which is, where can I get capital and investment from? You can start a business with pretty much nothing. You can build a business from there. You don't have to, though. You can, if you start out, you come up with a a business plan, and then that business plan will be based on assumptions that you've made. If you go and test the market and do the work to test those assumptions and put actual numbers and figures on those assumptions, then when you take that to an investor, or you take it to a bank manager, or even you put it on a crowdfunding website, you're going to be able to say, look, if you give me X, I will deliver Y. And you will be able to say that with some confidence, because you'll have done the research involved in knowing that your product is going to be successful. And that's where investors and banks and things like that, they love that kind of person, because you can clearly show them in the figures. You can say, look, this is where I'm going to spend my money. I know this will work because of this research that I've done, and I will be able to do this. You've got to face facts at the moment. Having your money in a bank is a complete waste of time, because if you've got money in the bank, it is sitting there with making almost no interest, and it's just sitting there as inflation is going crazy and the pound is dropping compared to the dollar. We're in changing times, and all investors at the moment are desperate to put their money somewhere other than in a bank, and that if they're going to be looking for new innovative businesses that are doing something different, to put their money, because they want to grow their money. Now, there's two ways that you can do that. They can give you a loan, which is, in a sense, if you're really confident about your business, a loan is a better thing, because it's if you know you can pay it back, it's short term. So up until a certain point, and then you pay off that loan, and then you move forward, and you still own all of your business. An investor, however, is different, because an investor can give you knowledge and information. At least that's what they like to say, is that's what they can do. But they will also take a share of your business, which means a share of future profits. And that's what they're interested in, is your business will have to grow. It will, you want your business to grow anyway, but there'll be a lot of pressure for your business to grow because there are other people involved in it. Having said that, I think that that's my preferred method of growing a business, because I tend to partner up with people that know their fields, that are also, useful people to have as investors. An investor doesn't always have to be someone that you never meet except for at board meetings or shareholder meetings. So, there is a lot of money out there at the moment to be grabbed for. There's also other things you can do, like grants and funding and things like that. And I've gone through that process, but we'll talk a bit more about that on the day. Okay.
This is a really interesting question.
Yeah.
Who do I need to get permission from or inform?
Okay, so this is an interesting one. To start with, who do I need to get permission from? Well, you don't need to get permission from anybody. That's the good news. In certain circumstances, so if you're a director of a company, I think you can't be a director if you have a criminal conviction. There are certain things, rules about who can be a director of a company, but you don't have to be, a director. I'm pretty sure that anyone can start a business, and the only person you need to inform is the tax office. And that's where you need to make a decision, and we're going to talk about this on the course, about how you want to structure your business. Do you want to be a sole trader, run everything through yourself, basically, as being the business? So it would be me, Rob Harrison, trading as, and then the name of my business. I would not be a company. Legally, that would be me. And we're very lucky in this country, because you can go self-employed and and work in a similar way as if you're a corporation. But that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
The other way of doing it is you can form a corporation, which is a little bit like, it's a little bit like various different things. It's a bit like a life in a video game, except a bit more expensive. You know, that's where you are actually making a new person in the eyes of the law. So me and Annelie here, we started a business together. We formed a legal entity, a new person. And this new person is great because, you know, this is my video game life. If this new person gets into trouble, we're only, you know, liable for, you know, if it's a limited company, for example, we're only liable for the investment that we've put into that company. So we're not personally liable. Whereas if I'm a sole trader on my own and I get into trouble, I'm personally liable. So there are various things to think about there, but you shouldn't be put off by it. You should go out there and start your business now. You don't have to incorporate now. You know, you don't have to become a company right away. I would say ultimately, if you want to grow a company, I'd recommend it, but not necessarily something you have to do right away. In this country, it's quite good, but there are certainly tax advantages. You know, the whole system is based around the fact that you know, if you're an employee. This is you know, kind of how messed up it is really. If you're an employee, you pay tax on what you earn and then you pay expenses. If you're a corporation, you pay expenses and then pay tax on what's left. So there are all sorts of expenses that you have in your business. And, you know, that's one thing that you will find when you start your business is that you will be paying a lot less tax than you were as an employee. That's one of the reasons why people create corporations, is so that they don't have to pay as much tax. And it's also that security of knowing.
Separation as well, sorry.
It's the separation, yeah.
You as an individual and your company that you have built and created. But as Rob says, you don't have to do it immediately. You can start as a sole trader and then change.
However, if I'm starting a business with Annelie here, I've got two choices really. I can start a company that we both own shares in, or I can start a partnership. The advantage of a company is if something goes wrong in that company, you know, you can fold up the company and start another one. You know, we're not personally liable for anything. Apart from as directors, there are rules that you have to follow. But if we're in a partnership and I go out there and get a bank loan, then Annelie will be liable for that bank loan. So if I run away, you'd have to pay all the money. So there are things like limited liability partnerships, but I don't want to get into it really.
There is one little thing I want to add. If you are going from if you're currently employed with an employer and you're starting your small business while you're employed, you must make sure you check your contract and speak to a HR department. Because very often the bigger companies can put a clause in your contract to say you can't partake in any other work. So it's like they call it moonlighting. I don't know what the term is. Well,
there are other things that
you just have to get permission.
Yeah, and
from your employer.
There are other clauses that people put in there where the employer owns any work that you do.
Especially if you work in education.
Yeah. The employer owns any work that you do while you're an employee of that company. So
just check.
It's worth checking.
Yeah.
The Apple computer, for example, Steve Wozniak, who made the first Apple computer, took it to Texas Instruments, I think it was, where he helped design calculators, and said, "Are you interested in this side project that I've got going on? Because you know, I don't know if you are interested, but you know, I have a clause in my contract which means that I need to you know, tell you this is if I want to do anything with it. And they said, no, we're not interested. The calculator business is where it's all happening. So they missed out on that. So it's definitely always worth asking if you've got one of those clauses.
It is.
But the only other thing that you need to do is you need to inform the tax office. Yeah. You will need to do a tax return. We'll talk about all of that in the course. A tax return is not something to be scared about. You may be apprehensive about it the first time you do it, but it's really actually... I mean, if you're trying to do one of these things in the United States... No, but in this country we have rules. We have things where basically they have to explain things to you. If you ask questions, things get explained to you. In America, you have to get an attorney.
Yeah. And the people on the other end of the phone at HMRC aren't as scary as everybody thinks they are. They're human beings, and they're actually quite pleasant people.
Just don't leave it till January when
don't
everyone's
ring them
on
in
the
January.
phone. But. Yeah, you do have to inform the tax office, but you don't need to get permission from anybody. Go out and do it, give it a go. Questions. Yes, the crochet animals do look ace. This is a flamingo. It's got a neck issue. There's also a multicoloured monkey. I'll just put the flamingo back. Okay.
That wasn't really a question, but thanks, Rosie.
So I'm going to go with this question. What if you don't have time to start a business? Well, it doesn't have to take much time. It does, of course, it has to take some time starting a business. To be honest, if you have no time but you have money, you don't even need to put time in, because you can become an investor in someone else's business and still have part of that business. Owning shares in a business means you actually own part of that business. So that is, is really good. If you don't have much time, then there are things that you can do, particularly with passive income. Passive income is something where you're making money, but you're not having to put time or effort in. So you're making money essentially while you sleep, while you're doing your normal day-to-day job, and it's based on creating products that you can then sell to people. You can even get other people to manage your products. So a really good example of this, one thing that a lot of people do, is buy a house and rent it to people, and you can get property management company to look after that house for you, and you don't have to do very much work. Other people will sort things out for you. But there are other businesses which don't take as much money as buying a house. So for example, writing a book can take a lot of time, but making a craft kit doesn't take that much time. There are intellectual products, like for example a piece of music, a book's a good one, but even a guide, or things that you can infinitely duplicate. Videos. There are all sorts of things that you can make which don't take that much time, but they can go on to have added value. I think craft's one of those things where you do like to, you want to be involved in the making of the products, but things like making craft kits maybe don't take as much time, but you still get the enjoyment of figuring out how to make the product. There are all sorts of ways. So, do still come along and learn a lot more about it, and then maybe you'll have an inspiration as to how you can fit that in to get your first product off the ground. What others have we?
There's just a couple left, I think.
How do you get a shelf at the Craft Collective, Annelie?
Oh wow, that's one for me, I think. So it's really simple. We've decided to keep everything incredibly straightforward, simple, and easy for people to access. So renting a shelf, it's £30 a month for your shelf space. The shelf spaces are 80 centimetres by 34 by 40 high. Once you've spent your £30 a month, you bring your products in, you display them how you wish, and then that's it. You leave, we'll take care of the rest. We will make the sales for you, we'll send your products off to their new homes, and at the end of each month, we will pay you directly into your bank account all the sales that you've made. That's straightforward and simple.
Yeah.
There's no length of contract. There's a no contract.
Yeah.
We have a terms and conditions that we ask everybody to sign, but it's just a little.
It's month on month, isn't it? Basically?
Yeah, it's easy in, easy out, and it's accessible for people whether they're already got a really good growing business or if they're just starting and having a little taster and seeing how it goes. We have currently stockists in the shop who their products in our shop is the first time they've ever sold anything to people who this is their full-time business, and
Yep.
There's a real variety of levels in between. So it's that simple. And if you would like to, you can either pop into the Craft Collective, we're opposite the cinema on 4th Street in Redruth, or you can pop over to our Facebook page and drop us a message. Easy peasy.
And I think we're pretty. Have we got another question? I think we're wrapping it up there.
That's it. Yeah, that's the end of the questions. We haven't had any more come in the last few minutes.
I mean, it's pretty cool that we're able to do this kind of thing today. I think video in particular is a really good tool to use to market your products. We've not really talked about marketing in this, but we will do on the day. And hopefully we'll do more of these kind of things and have some guests maybe next time so they can talk about their
that would be good.
Craft business. Okay.
So if anyone's got any other questions, feel free to pop them onto the Facebook page and we will answer them.
Yeah.
And if you want to get your tickets, you can either pop into the Craft Collective shop and buy them from myself and Jenny, or you can go onto our Eventbrite page and buy them online there.
I'll be answering questions on the YouTube comments as well if you want to put them there, if that's easy to find. Tickets are available through Eventbrite, but also at the shop. But please buy the ticket because we're running short on numbers. And we're going to run out of seats, and also the don't leave it till the last minute.
Ticket sales do close at 6 p.m. on the 9th of March, the day before. So after 6 p.m. you won't be able to buy any. That's to ensure that we can get everything ready for you and be nice and prepared for knowing who's coming the next day.
We're trying to. We don't know the venue yet. We're going to let you know 2 weeks in advance. Basically, we're trying to find somewhere that will allow as many people to come as possible. So we don't want to stop selling tickets because we want as many people to come as possible.
We've over exceeded the number capacity in the Craft Collective. So now we're having to find alternative venues.
We did think about this in advance though, so it does say on the thing that we email out from Eventbrite actually all the people, so you will be getting an email letting you know what's happening on the day. And
again, any questions, feel free to contact myself or Rob. You can give us a call at the shop or contact us via social media.
Okay, thanks very much and have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.